Welcome to Pearced Off, the counter-apologetics and philosophy segment with myself, Jonathan M.S. Pearce, for the Skepticule Podcast. And this time I'm going to talk about the need for certainty, the psychological need for certainty, and how that equates to God did it. So psychologically speaking, humans really struggle with the lack of certainty, with ambiguity and the unknown. If you think back to your own behaviour in pasts, I'm sure that you can find anecdotal evidence for this. This is compounded by the desire for a just world, one that is fair, as illustrated by the just world theory. And I think I talked about this in a previous episode about how my partner and I were talking and our boys had broken an oven door. And rather than just say, "Oh, shit happens," my partner said, that must have happened for a reason. Maybe our oven, because it was going to cost like £1,000 to replace. And she said maybe our oven was going to give off loads of carbon monoxide poisoning. So actually that's happened for a reason type thing. And the idea is that something bad happens, you look to justify it because the world just can't be unfair. So the sort of world balances the books. Now, back to the idea of certainty. So agnosticism is something that doesn't come easy to us. In fact, this is compounded by research that shows that people are with more adamant and certain beliefs, I think fundamentalist Christians and militant atheists, appear to be happier than those with more wavering beliefs. Certainty does make us happier. The New Yorker reported in Why We Need Answers, quote, "The human mind is incredibly averse to uncertainty and ambiguity. From an early age, we respond to uncertainty or lack of clarity by spontaneously generating plausible explanations. What's more, we hold on to these invented explanations as having intrinsic value of their own. Once we have them, we don't like to let them go. In 1972, the psychologist Jerome Kagan posited that uncertainty resolution was one of the foremost determinants of our behavior. When we can't immediately gratify our desire to know, we become highly motivated to reach a concrete explanation. That motivation, in Kagan's conception, lies at the heart of most other common motives: achievement, affiliation, power, and the like. We want to eliminate the distress of the unknown. We want, in other words, to achieve cognitive closure. This term was coined by the social psychologist Ari Kruglansky, who eventually defined it as individuals' desire for a firm answer to a question and an aversion toward ambiguity. A drive for certainty in the face of a less than certain world. When faced with heightened ambiguity and a lack of clear-cut answers, we need to know, and as quickly as possible." End quote. Michael Argyle wrote in the book The Psychology of Happiness, quote, "The third way in which religion may affect well-being is via beliefs." Ellison, 1991, found that having firm beliefs, sometimes called existential certainty, correlated with life satisfaction independently of both church attendance and private devotions and their effect on well-being via their impact on beliefs. Certainty of beliefs is found to be advantageous, producing existential well-being. This may explain the popularity of strict churches in the USA and some other parts of the world. End quote. So it's not the content of belief, but the certainty with which it is held that leads to, or at least is correlated to, well-being. In fact, as Louise Altman states in her piece Anxiety and the Quest for Certainty, quote, "We can blame the brain for our incessant drive for certainty." Dr. Robert Burton, former chief of neurology at the University of California, San Francisco, comments, "I don't believe that we can avoid certainty bias, but we can mitigate its effect by becoming aware of how our mind assesses itself. We need to recognize that the feelings of certainty and conviction are involuntary mental sensations, not logical conclusions. One reason we're hardwired to seek certainty, where in the real world there is none, is due to the brain's brilliant capacity for prediction. Jeff Hawkins, inventor of the Palm Pilot and founder of the Neuroscience Institute, writes, "Your brain receives patterns from the outside world, stores them as memories, and makes predictions by combining what it has seen before and what is happening now. Prediction is a primary function of the neocortex and the foundation of intelligence. With about 40 environmental cues and that the brain can consciously track at any given moment, and subconscious cues numbering around 2 million, the brain elegantly selects the amount of data it will use by recognizing pattern. The brain likes patterns." Author David Rock states, like an addiction to anything, when the craving for certainty is met, there is a sensation of reward. The ability to predict and then obtain data that meets those predictions generates an overall towards response. It's part of the reason games like solitaire, Sudoku, and crossword puzzles are enjoyable. They give you a little rush from creating more certainty in the world in a safe way. So we can guess that the emotions associated with the perception of certainty, satisfaction, contentment, calmness, confidence, relief, comfort, stability, and safety, are experienced as rewards to our pattern-seeking brains. End quote. So this is important because when we look at how the universe works, or consciousness, or some other such puzzle, there is an attraction to posit something to plug that gap of uncertainty, and it's all too powerful for many people. God of the gaps. So this idea that we don't know something, so in the old days, say lightning, you go, well, we don't understand that, so therefore, we need to plug that with some kind of what some psychologists call attribution, some kind of explanation for it, because we can't just go, oh, look at that amazingly powerful thing. I don't know how it exists or what it is, so there you go. No, we'd say, oh, that's Thor getting angry or whatever. And I think this is summed up by Richard Carrier really, really well. So the cause of lightning, he says, the cause of lightning was once, and I said this previously in another podcast segment, the cause of lightning was once thought to be God's wrath, but turned out to be the unintelligent outcome of the mindless natural forces. We once thought an intelligent being must have arranged and maintained the amazingly ordered motions of the solar system, but now we know it's the inevitable outcome of mindless natural forces. Disease was once thought to be the mischief of supernatural demons, but now we know that tiny unintelligent organisms are the cause, which reproduce and infect us according to mindless natural forces. In case after case, without exception, the trend has been to find that purely natural causes underlie any phenomena. Not once has the cause of anything turned out to really be God's wrath or intelligent meddling or demonic mischief or anything supernatural at all. The collective weight of these observations is enormous. Supernaturalism has been tested 1,000,000 times and has always lost. Naturalism has been tested at least 1,000,000 times and has always won. A horse that runs 1,000,000 races and never loses is about to run yet another race with a horse that has lost every single one of the 1,000,000 races it has run. Which horse should we bet on? And the answer is obvious. End quote. So there is this need for closure inherent in humans that lends itself to faulty conclusions and oversimplifying problems. We see this with the Middle East, Afghanistan, and terrorism in general. And you might want to see Adam Curtis's superb Bitter Lake for more on that, because he talks about how we simplify these things because we can't cope with such complex scenarios. So we simplify it into good and evil, and politics does that really, really often. So when we have such complexity, and we know that actually terrorism has really heightened our need for cognitive closure, and there is this idea that simplicity is really required for us to understand it, and that leads to certainty, and therefore we can see that God did it is a really easy answer that simplifies all the complex unknowns that there are in the world. You know, the world is an exceptionally complex place with humans who are exceptionally complex organisms with huge amounts of variables, and there are things, natural phenomena that we just don't understand, and consciousness and being in the universe. But God did it really is the easy answer, and we need it. We need that cognitive closure, and God did it provides it. But in all probability, as Carrier said, it's the wrong conclusion. We have biases, so just be aware, do your best to mitigate them. Don't plug your gaps with God because it makes you feel better. Do it because it's the best to plug out there, supported by the best evidence and reasoning. If not, remain agnostic and certainly follow the evidence. So on probabilities, naturalism is always really going to win out. So don't plug that gap with the God did it because it makes you feel better. and you need to be aware that you have biases that are acting to just make you feel better. Anyway, as ever, question everything. I thought that might be something to talk about, that need for cognitive closure and the well-being we get from certainty. Drop by my blog at patheos.com/blogs/tippling. I'm a tippling philosopher. Goodbye.